Ladies and gentlemen, let me ask you something powerful right now. What if the very thing you call failure is actually the doorway to your greatest becoming? What if every fall in your life was not a mistake, but a message, not a punishment, but a preparation, not the end, but the invitation to rise into who you were always meant to be? Today's message is titled, Why Do We Fall? Falling is not failure. It is education in motion, growth wearing rough clothing, and wisdom arriving without permission. When something doesn't work, when a door closes, when plans collapse and expectations shatter, the mind rushes to label the moment as a loss. But that label is the smallest possible interpretation of a much larger event. What you are really experiencing in those moments is not defeat but refinement. Life is shaping you, sanding your edges, strengthening your core, and deepening your understanding through experience that no book, teacher, or lecture could ever give you. Failure assumes the journey has ended, but falling is evidence that you are still moving. It proves you are participating fully in life, rather than hiding safely on the sidelines. Nothing has gone wrong because something did not work. Something is being realigned because something better is trying to find its way to you. Every fall contains an instruction, even if it feels wrapped in disappointment. Sometimes the lesson is about patience, sometimes about boundaries, sometimes about courage, and sometimes about letting go. You do not fall backward in life, you fall forward into awareness. Each misstep shows you a truth that success alone could never reveal. Where you were attached, where you were afraid, where you were trying to control what needed surrender. The pain that comes with falling is not evidence of weakness. It is proof that you cared, that you tried, that you reached for more than comfort, and reaching always involves risk. You cannot grow and stay safe at the same time. You cannot expand and remain untouched. Falling simply means you dared to stretch beyond who you were yesterday. What feels like loss is often just a redirection wearing a disguise. The dream you didn't achieve may not have been wrong, only too small. The relationship you lost may not have failed, only completed its purpose. The job that ended may not have rejected you, only released you towards something more aligned. Life is not removing what you love. It is making space for what loves you better. In that sense, falling is a secret ally. It breaks illusions, it dissolves false confidence, it removes what cannot grow with you, and in that clearing, something stronger begins to take root. If you look closely, every major transformation in your life likely followed a moment you once called failure. That is not coincidence, that is confirmation. Falling is not a verdict on your worth, it is a sign of your evolution. The soil only breaks open when something new is meant to emerge. What you thought was the end is often just the moment the seed begins to grow. Every fall carries a message, even when it arrives wrapped in confusion, disappointment, or pain. Most people see a fall as proof that life is working against them, but in truth it is often life working precisely for them in ways the mind cannot yet understand. A setback is not random, it has meaning built into it. When something in your life collapses, it is rarely the event itself that matters most, but what the event is trying to reveal to you. Life is always communicating, always nudging, always guiding, but it does not always speak in comfort. Sometimes its language is friction. Sometimes it teaches through loss instead of gain. And sometimes it delivers clarity not through success, but through sorrow. A fall is not a punishment handed down by some invisible force. It is more like a message written in bold letters across your experience. It is a signal to pause and pay attention. Perhaps you were walking in a direction that no longer fit who you were becoming. Perhaps you were holding on to something that had already expired. Perhaps you were settling for less than what your spirit knew was possible. When life interrupts you, it is not trying to ruin your plans, it is trying to awaken you to a larger plan. What feels like disruption is often divine correction in disguise. People often ask, why is this happening to me? when the better question is, what is this trying to teach me? Because when you ask better questions, you receive better answers. The message within a fall may be about learning self-respect, discovering inner strength, or recognizing where fear has been quietly running your life. It may be showing you the cost of staying silent, of avoiding truth, of clinging to comfort instead of courage. The fall exposes what needs healing, what needs release, and what needs realignment. It pulls into light the parts of you that have been ignored and calls them forward to be transformed. The problem is not that you fall. The problem is when you refuse to listen. Pain becomes suffering only when the lesson is rejected. But when you are willing to receive the message, even disappointment becomes a doorway to wisdom. Each fall invites you to rise not just stronger, but clearer. Clearer about what matters, clearer about who you are, clearer about what you will no longer tolerate and what you are finally ready to welcome. Your life is not falling apart. It is falling into a deeper order you have not yet learned to recognize. And when you finally decode the message hidden inside the moment that hurt you, you discover that life was never trying to break you, only trying to make itself heard. Growth follows a simple pattern that never changes, whether you are 5 years old or 90 years old. You try, you stumble, you learn, and you try again. When a child first attempts to walk, the room becomes a small battlefield of wobbly steps and soft falls. The child does not analyze the fall or take it personally. There is no identity attached to it, no story about being bad at walking. There is only curiosity and instinct. The body simply rises again and reaches forward, pulled by an inner knowing that movement is life. And eventually, after enough falling, walking becomes natural. This same principle governs every part of human growth, yet as adults we forget it. We start to believe that falling at something means we were never meant to succeed at it. But that belief is learned, not true. Falling is not evidence that something is wrong with you. It is proof that you are in the process of becoming skilled at life. Every success you admire in others was once a series of unseen stumbles. The difference is not that they avoided falling. The difference is that they did not let falling convince them to stop. They understood, even unconsciously, that getting better at anything requires being bad at it first. Yet we expect ourselves to master relationships without learning, handle emotions without practice, and build confidence without mistakes. That expectation is unreasonable and unkind to yourself. You would never speak to a child struggling to walk the way you speak to yourself when you stumble in life. Each time you fall and rise, you develop something more valuable than skill, resilience. Confidence is not built by success alone. It is built by surviving failure and discovering you are still standing. With every attempt you gain experience, and experience quietly shapes strength. Over time, you begin to fear falling less, not because the falls disappear, but because you trust your ability to rise. That trust changes everything. It gives you the courage to try again, to take risks, to step beyond what you already know, and that courage is where transformation lies. When you refuse to rise after falling, you freeze your growth. But when you rise, even tired and uncertain, you tell life that you are willing to learn, and life always teaches those who are willing. Falling becomes training rather than tragedy. It becomes the classroom where patience is built, where clarity forms, and where inner strength is slowly revealed. So the next time you stumble, remember you are not behind, you are practicing. You are not failing, you are learning how to walk into a larger life than the one you have known so far. Pain has a way of convincing people that it has come to end something, when in truth it has come to begin something deeper. When life wounds you, it often feels personal, as though something has gone wrong inside you or around you, as if you have been singled out for suffering. But pain is not an enemy with a mission to destroy you. It is a teacher with a difficult voice. It enters your life not to announce the end of your story, but to rewrite it from the inside out. Destruction is loud and empty, but rebuilding is quiet and purposeful, and growth almost always happens where comfort once lived. When you are hurt, your first instinct is to resist, to wish the pain away, to ask for your old life back. But the old life cannot return, because it no longer fits the person you are becoming. Pain rearranges your priorities. It teaches you what matters by showing you what does not. It strips away what is false, what is excessive, and what is no longer aligned with your truth. In this stripping, something sacred happens. You begin to see yourself clearly, sometimes for the very first time. The masks fall, the pretending stops, and in the rawness of that moment, your real strength begins to surface. Pain has a strange way of softening the heart while hardening the spirit. It makes you more compassionate because you now understand suffering. It makes you more humble because you realize you cannot control everything. And it makes you more honest because there is nothing left to hide behind. The person you become after pain is often wiser, quieter, and more aware. You stop chasing what does not nourish your soul. You stop staying where you are not valued, and you start listening to yourself instead of the noise around you. If pain were truly here to destroy you, it would leave you empty. But instead, after every storm, there is a strange fullness, a depth you did not have before, a strength you did not know you possessed. Pain carves out space within you, and in that space, understanding grows. Peace eventually settles not because life becomes easier, but because you become stronger. What once overwhelmed you will one day become the evidence of your endurance. The memory will remain, but it will no longer control you. Instead, it will stand as proof that you can survive the dark and still choose the light. And in realizing that, you discover that pain did not come to end you. It came to rebuild you into someone capable of carrying more life, more love, and more truth than you ever thought possible. Life has a way of disturbing what we grow too comfortable inside. Just when you think you have everything figured out, something shifts, collapses, or disappears, and you are left standing in the middle of uncertainty. In those moments, it feels as if life has turned against you, as if the ground beneath you has given way for no reason at all. But the truth is far more powerful and far less cruel. Life does not shake you to crush you, it shakes you to wake you. Discomfort is not a sign that something has gone wrong. It is often a sign that something important is trying to break through your awareness. When everything is calm, the mind falls asleep. Routine becomes a quiet prison, and familiarity dulls your hunger for more. You can go through years of existence without ever truly being alive if nothing challenges you to change. Stability, when it lasts too long, can quietly turn into stagnation. That is why life intervenes. It introduces restlessness, it disrupts patterns, it pulls you out of autopilot so that you can finally see that you were meant for more than repetition dressed up as security. The shake-up is not destruction, it is invitation. Awakening rarely comes gently. If it did, most people would ignore it. Real awakening arrives like a knock that becomes a pounding. It comes as disappointment that forces self-reflection. It comes as loss that demands maturity. It comes as heartbreak that teaches self-respect. These moments strip you of the illusion that you are in control of everything, and in doing so, they hand you something far more valuable, awareness. Awareness changes what success can never change. It realigns your values. It shifts your focus. It awakens parts of you that were buried under fear, comfort, and distraction. You begin to question your direction. You begin to examine your relationships. You begin to look at your habits and realize which ones are numbing you and which ones are nourishing you. The shaking wakes you up to the cost of staying the same. It reveals the gap between the life you are living and the life you are meant to live, and that awareness becomes the turning point. Once you see clearly, you cannot unsee. Once you awaken, you cannot return to sleep without discomfort. Life does not interrupt you to confuse you. It interrupts you to align you. It is calling you out of a smaller version of yourself and into a bigger truth. The discomfort is not cruelty. It is clarity arriving uninvited. And what feels like chaos is often the moment before a deeper order takes shape. There comes a moment in every life when the tension between who you are and who you are becoming grows too loud to ignore. Inside you there is a quiet voice that longs for more meaning, more authenticity, and more depth, while another voice clings tightly to what feels safe, familiar, and predictable. When these two voices collide, you fall. Not because you are weak, but because you are being pulled in opposite directions. One part of you wants flight, and another wants shelter. One part wants expansion, and another wants certainty. And in that inner struggle, something has to give. The soul is not interested in comfort. It is interested in growth. It wants to stretch beyond limits, move beyond labels, and rise toward truth. But comfort does not like movement. Comfort prefers repetition. It resists change and whispers convincing excuses about why now is not the right time, why it is safer to wait, why it is better to stay with what you know than risk what you do not. And so you remain in situations that no longer serve you, relationships that shrink you, and routines that numb you, all because they feel familiar. Over time, familiarity becomes a cage that feels like home, and leaving it feels like danger. When you finally fall, it is not life betraying you, it is life rescuing you from staying too small. The fall breaks the illusion that comfort is safety. It shows you that safety without growth slowly becomes suffocation. The collapse becomes a message that staying the same is no longer an option. You can either evolve or remain imprisoned by what once felt secure. The fall forces you to choose between holding on and rising up. Often you do not fall because something outside of you fails. You fall because something inside of you refuses to settle anymore. Your heart outgrows your habits. Your vision outgrows your environment. And when the gap between who you are and where you are becomes too wide, life creates a disruption. That disruption is not destruction. It is elevation in disguise. It is the soul saying, you were not designed to live at this level forever. Letting go of comfort is frightening, not because the unknown is dangerous, but because it is unfamiliar. Yet every new level of life was once unknown to you before it became normal. You survived every first step you were afraid to take. And you will survive this one too. The fall is not an ending. It is the removal of what is no longer strong enough to hold the weight of who you are becoming. When you hit the ground in life, it often feels like humiliation, defeat, or defeat's quieter cousin, disappointment. The instinct is to rush away from that low place as fast as possible, to stand back up and pretend you were never there. But the ground is not just a place of pain, it is a place of instruction. It teaches lessons that success rarely explains and pride never allows. When everything is stripped away and you can no longer pretend, perform, or impress, you come face to face with yourself, and in that stillness the most honest learning begins. The ground teaches humility, not as humiliation, but as truth. It reminds you that you are not invincible, yet it also shows you that you are unbreakable. There is a quiet strength in accepting that you are human, that you have limits, and that you do not control everything. This acceptance does not weaken you, it frees you. When you stop pretending you have all the answers, you become open to receiving the right ones. Humility makes room for growth. It allows you to listen instead of argue with life. It allows you to heal instead of hide. The ground also teaches surrender, not as giving up, but as letting go. There is a deep difference. Giving up is quitting on life. Letting go is releasing what is no longer aligned with it. When you lie on the ground after a fall, you realize what cannot go back with you when you rise. You see which attachments keep you heavy, which fears keep you frozen, and which expectations keep you disappointed. In that awareness, you begin to loosen your grip on what you cannot control, and for the first time in a long while, your heart can breathe again, and then there is truth. The ground has no room for illusion. When you are down, the masks come off. You are no longer trapped in who you pretend to be or who others expect you to be. You are just you, raw, real, exposed, and in that exposure, you discover a deeper identity that was hidden under performance and pressure. The ground introduces you to the self beneath the roles, beneath the titles, beneath the noise. It reminds you who you are when nothing is left to prove and nowhere is left to run. If you listen instead of resist, the ground becomes sacred space. A place where strength is reborn, a place where clarity forms, a place where you rise not angry at life, but wiser because of it. You do not leave the ground unchanged. You leave it carrying understanding, carrying resilience, and carrying a quieter confidence that does not need applause to exist. And when you finally stand again, your feet will touch the world differently because they remember what the ground taught you when you thought you were at your lowest. Every time life knocks you down, there is an opportunity hiding in the impact. An opportunity not just to recover, but to rise with greater clarity than before. Breakdowns, failures, and setbacks are not meaningless interruptions. They are invitations to awaken to truths you may have been avoiding. Most people see a fall as the end of a story, but it is often the turning point. When you allow yourself to receive the lesson, to listen instead of resisting, you discover that what seemed like an ending is actually a guidepost pointing toward growth. The moments that challenge you are not random. They are carefully placed to teach, redirect, and prepare you for a larger life than you had imagined. Breakdowns create breakthroughs when you stop looking backward and start looking inward. When something collapses, it forces you to examine what was really happening beneath the surface. Perhaps a habit was holding you back. Perhaps a relationship was draining your energy. Perhaps fear was dictating your decisions. In the discomfort of collapse, the illusion of control fades and you are confronted with reality. Your own choices, your own patterns, your own inner landscape. And it is here, in this honest confrontation, that transformation begins. The fall is a mirror reflecting what you need to see, and the breakthrough is the courage to act on that vision. Trusting in the process is essential. People often resist the lessons embedded in their hardships because they are uncomfortable, and discomfort is rarely welcomed by the mind. Yet, it is precisely that discomfort that signals growth is occurring. If you refuse to confront what the fall reveals, suffering can linger indefinitely. But if you allow the moment to teach you, if you are willing to see the truth without judgment, every setback becomes a stepping stone. The breakdown stops being a barrier and starts becoming a bridge to a wiser, stronger, and more aligned self. When you rise after a fall with awareness, you do not simply return to where you were, you ascend to a new level of understanding. You begin to recognize patterns that once trapped you, clarify values that were previously obscured, and identify desires that are genuinely yours rather than borrowed from the expectations of others. This clarity transforms the way you engage with life. You no longer chase what is empty or settle for what is convenient. Every step forward is intentional, informed by insight gained through struggle. In essence, the act of rising after a fall is the real measure of growth. Breakdowns are not the end, they are the teacher. And breakthroughs do not arrive magically. They are born from the willingness to face what the fall reveals, to integrate the lesson, and to move forward with newfound vision and strength. Life is not meant to be merely survived. Too often, people mistake existence for living, measuring themselves by routines, obligations, and the absence of calamity, rather than by the depth of their experiences and the expansion of their spirit. Surviving means staying within the boundaries of what is familiar, predictable, and safe. It means minimizing risk, avoiding discomfort, and keeping your heart protected. But life's purpose is not to keep you safe. It is to help you grow, to help you expand, to help you become more fully who you are meant to be. Expansion requires movement, courage, and a willingness to stretch beyond what you already know. To survive is to react. To expand is to respond with awareness, intention, and curiosity. Expansion is not always comfortable. It asks you to step into situations where you are untested and unfamiliar, where the outcome is uncertain and the stakes feel high. It requires you to confront your fears, to question assumptions, and to shed aspects of yourself that no longer serve your highest potential. Surviving encourages repetition. Expanding encourages transformation. Surviving clings to control. Expanding embraces trust. Surviving seeks safety. Expanding seeks alignment with purpose. The difference between the two is not in circumstance, but in mindset. One reacts to life from fear. The other engages with life from a place of possibility. Every challenge, setback, or discomfort is an opportunity to expand rather than simply survive. When you feel knocked off course, it is not a signal to shrink back, but an invitation to rise into a larger version of yourself. Expansion occurs when you choose to see obstacles as lessons, failures as redirections, and pain as a teacher rather than a punishment. It emerges when you refuse to be defined by limitation, when you refuse to allow circumstances to dictate your potential. Surviving keeps you safe in a small box. Expanding pushes you toward freedom, growth, and authenticity. The process of expanding through life is continuous. There is no final destination where survival becomes obsolete. Every stage of life presents new challenges, new opportunities, and new invitations to rise higher. Each time you choose expansion over mere survival, you develop resilience, wisdom, and a deeper understanding of yourself. You learn to respond with intention rather than react with fear. You begin to align your actions with your values and your heart rather than with what seems easiest or safest. In doing so, you discover the difference between simply existing and truly living, and you come to realize that life's greatest rewards are reserved not for those who endure, but for those who embrace the journey of continual expansion. Falling is often misunderstood as the opposite of progress, when in reality it is the prelude to true ascent. Every person who has ever achieved greatness has faced moments when they felt defeated, broken, or incapable of continuing. What separates those who rise from those who remain down is not circumstance, but perspective. You did not fall to fail, you fell to fly. Each fall carries within it the seeds of your next level, the hidden blueprint for growth, and the unrecognized strength that can only emerge when you are pushed to your limits. The moment of impact is not the end, it is the invitation to transformation. When you fall, it is an opportunity to shed what no longer serves you. Old beliefs, habits, and attachments often hold you in patterns that limit your potential. The fall shakes you free from them, whether you realize it immediately or not. The discomfort you feel is not punishment. It is the necessary force that loosens your grip on stagnation. It forces a reevaluation of what truly matters, what aligns with your purpose, and what deserves your energy. Without the fall, you might remain comfortable but stagnant, safe but unfulfilled, busy but misaligned. The act of rising after a fall is where the real power lies. Rising is not simply returning to where you were. It is returning with awareness, strength, and intention. Each time you rise, you carry with you lessons learned, wisdom earned, and confidence forged through experience. You begin to recognize that the obstacles you once feared are now the very platforms from which you can launch yourself higher. Your resilience grows, your clarity sharpens, and your vision expands. The fall becomes less about what you lost and more about what you gained in insight, perspective, and courage. Falling also teaches humility and compassion. When you experience struggle firsthand, you begin to understand the struggles of others. You recognize that success is rarely linear, that pain is part of growth, and that human beings are capable of far more than they often believe. This understanding allows you to approach life and others with empathy, patience, and patience toward yourself. You learn that falling is not shameful, but human, and that rising is not luck, but choice. Every fall is a rehearsal for flight. Every setback is a setup for soaring. The power of the fall lies in the rise it makes possible. To fall is to confront limits, to experience vulnerability, and to face reality unflinchingly. But to rise after falling is to claim your strength, to trust your ability to overcome, and to step into the fullness of your potential. Flying is not the absence of falling. It is the courage to lift off despite it. And when you rise, you do not return as the person who fell. You rise as someone capable of heights that were previously unimaginable.